The incident command system was something that was developed primarily by the fire services when they were having to deal with massive wildfires. As we've had more large disasters across the country, we have found it very useful in other situations. In fact, it was so useful that FEMA eventually decided that the National Incident Management System was going to be kind of the gold standard for managing all mass casualty incidents or natural disasters. And disasters could be either natural, so it could be like weather, like fire or tornadoes. We have a lot more tornadoes than we do fires in this area. Or it may be something man-made. So you may have a active shooting event with multiple patients. The system presents this in a very organized way. And as part of the system, we have to have common terminology. And you learn about this in the NIMS training that FEMA provides. All EMS, fire, police, emergency responders of any sort have to complete this NIMS training so that we have similar, if not exact, terminology. As far as terminology, we don't want to be using a wide variety of like 10 codes or signals or anything like that. It needs to be standardized so that no matter where you may go and respond to this disaster, because you may respond to a disaster 4 states over, and you need to understand the language that's being used, and we all need to use the same language so we don't have confusion between different services. One of the uses of the terminology is to designate different resources. So we have things like personnel and facilities and equipment and supplies. And when somebody uses one of those terms, we understand exactly what they mean. Titles are an example of common terminology. So we have the commander, and that is generally the most experienced person on scene. So when you first arrive, if you're the first person, you may be the most experienced and you may be the incident commander. And then as more experienced people arrive on scene, they may take over command from you, or you can transfer command to them. But the incident commander, so commander is the one that is in charge of the whole incident. Under the commander, you'll have different branches, and those typically are called chiefs. And then under each chief, you'll have a director. We don't want to have too many people under one person, so generally we figure about 6 to 8 people is a good span of control for one person to manage. If we get much beyond that, there's just too much for them to keep up with. Part of keeping up with your group of 6 to 8 people under you is making sure you have good accountability. So everybody is always aware of who is under them and what they're doing and whether they're safe or not, and that we don't end up leaving anybody behind or losing someone in the incident. Because these could be incidents involving 50 ambulances and 4 different fire departments and several law enforcement agencies, and we don't want to have anybody get lost in the whole mix. Perhaps one of the biggest problems we have is communications. So trying to get all these different services, police, fire, EMS, and different ambulance services and different fire departments to all communicate is difficult. It would be simple to say we'll all use one channel, that way we can all talk to each other, but then with everybody trying to communicate, that channel would be overwhelmed. So oftentimes you'll need multiple channels and forms of communication. And this then makes it difficult for police on some frequencies to talk to fire on different frequencies, or EMS, or maybe you discovered something that is unsafe and you need a rescue team of some sort. How do you communicate with them? So trying to establish these forms of communication has proven to be quite difficult, and my experiences have been that most of the times when there is a problem that happens on a disaster, it's usually because we've had a problem with the communication system. So that's a little bit about the National Incident Management System. You'll learn a lot more about it when you complete your NIMS training. Remember, that is something that you will have to do if you're going to work in the field. So go to the NIMS, FEMA NIMS training, and you have 100, 200, 700, and most people also complete 800. So complete all 4 of those courses. They'll go into this in much more detail and are much better organized. But when you complete those, you should be ready and able to work on a disaster anywhere in the country.